Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Howard International Ministries online Bible study. We are in week 3 of our Identity Shift series. We're talking about sonship. Um, as you can see, I am not Pastor Dexter Howard. He is currently attending a conference, so I have the privilege of filling in for him this evening. My name is John Jones, and I'm a member of the Restoration Place Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've also served alongside Pastor Dexter with the Restoration Northwest Arkansas campus. So it's an honor and a privilege to have an opportunity to fill in for him this evening. What we've been discussing over the past few weeks has come from Pastor Dexter's book, Identity Shift, the change that changes everything. If you have not had an opportunity to pick up this book, I highly encourage it. It's a phenomenal book. It's an easy read. It's guaranteed to shift your perspective in how you view yourself, and as a result, how you relate to God. I believe that this is a book that could be a foundational piece in the life of every believer. So if you had not had an opportunity to purchase your copy of Identity Shift, I encourage you to go and as soon as we end this broadcast, pick you up a copy. We'll be continuing and building upon what Pastor Dexter has shared over the past 2 weeks in discussing sonship. And what we're going to be talking about this evening is the 7 virtues of a son. Hopefully you had an opportunity to receive the email communication that went out, and you were able to go ahead and download the notes for this evening. And so taking a look at the 7 virtues of a son, for me, when I think about anytime I'm wanting to aspire, or anytime I'm aspiring to become something, the first thing that I try to find is a model, so that I can pattern my actions, my thinking after that individual or entity. And when we begin talking about being sons of God, sons and daughters of God, uh, the model that has been given to us is Jesus Christ, him being the Son of God, coming to earth and modeling for us what sonship really looks like. And so as we are endeavoring to become more and more like the model that we've been given in Jesus, the way that we can begin measuring or evaluating how we measure up to that is to look at the virtues, the characteristics that were displayed through the life of Jesus, and then begin to do some evaluation to see how those things are played out in our own life. What type of fruit is being produced in our own lives? Are these characteristics easily identifiable through our lives? And if not, what may be some of the causes that are preventing from some of those things from being displayed in our life? So first thing is looking for a model. We've been given a model in the form of Jesus. And then the next thing is really understanding what a virtue is. And so when we talk about a virtue, there's 7 virtues that a son should display or should be represented in the life of a son of God. And if we're going to understand these virtues, we first, I think, have to understand what a virtue is. So I'm going to read a quote by Arthur Holmes, and I love how he describes a virtue. He describes a virtue as a right inner disposition, and a disposition is a tendency to act in certain ways. Disposition is more basic, lasting, and pervasive than the particular motive or intention behind a certain action. It differs from a sudden impulse in being a settled habit of mind, an internalized and often reflective trait. Virtues are general character traits that provide inner sanctions on our own particular motives, intentions, and outward conduct. So, in essence, a virtue is a tendency which stems from who we are at our core level, that causes us to act in certain ways. Um, Expounding upon that more, you can think of a virtue as being something that is not just um, an impulse, whether it's good or bad. It's not just an impulse. It is a settled state or habit of mind. It's something that relates to who we are as people, uh, that is intimately tied to and interdependent upon our character. It speaks to who we are. It speaks to our very core nature or character. Um, so I think as we pursue and identify um, with the character and nature of God, um, and we begin to be molded in the image of His Son Jesus, that uh, there are going to be characteristics, as we go throughout this process, that are already in us that begin to be revealed, by His grace and through our faith, because the Bible tells us in Genesis that we were created in the image and likeness of God. So we've been created in the image and likeness of God. So those traits, those characteristics are there. They just have to be revealed. That's why the Bible also speaks in Romans chapter 8, that the earth is waiting for the revealing of the sons of God, because those that nature, those characteristics are there. They just have to be revealed. Um, and there are, as I mentioned, there are seven virtues that are manifested in true sons of God, which can be found in the life of Jesus, who is our model, for that we're to pattern ourselves after, as sons and daughters of God. And so the first virtue, if you're following along with your guide or with your notes, the first virtue is that a true son carries the DNA of the Father. When you think about it in a natural sense, the way that if you're doing a paternity test or what have you, trying to determine who the father of a particular child is, they're going to perform a DNA test. They're going to look to see, does that child have the DNA of the father, and that's how you can identify, um, you know who the father of the child actually is. And so, as sons and daughters of God, we should carry the DNA of God the Father. That means that, as I mentioned, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 says we've been created, we've been made in His image and in His likeness. So, that being the case, that means that there should be things about us that uh, resemble God the Father. Whether it's Him reflected in our actions, Him reflected in the way that we talk, the way that we conduct ourselves, Him reflected in um, the way that we respond to things, our thoughts about things, our patterns of behavior, our thoughts of, or our patterns of belief. There should be evidence, there should be residue in our lives that really speaks to God being our Father, that people can look at those things and pinpoint and say, and they point them back to God as being our Father. So that's the first virtue. That's true sons carry the DNA of the Father. Okay. Moving along to the second virtue, virtue number two, a son of God is a follower. And I think that if we look at the life of Jesus, this is a virtue that is readily apparent. Um, Jesus always sought to only do what He saw the Father do. He sought to only speak what He heard from the Father. He was always uh, seeking the Father in prayer. He was trying to make sure what He was doing was in line with the will of the Father. He was following the Father. Um, you're taking a look at Mark chapter 8, verse 34 through 35. It reads, when He had called the people to Himself, with his disciples also. He said to them, whoever desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. So Jesus made it very clear in Mark 8:34 through 35 that if we are to be his disciples, then we must take up our cross and we must follow him. You cannot be a true son of God and not be a follower. Um, Following simply it implies that we accept the leadership of another. We accept their guidance. We accept their influence. We move behind that person in the same direction and conform to what the leader is doing. So in following God, we are accepting his leadership, we're accepting his guidance, we are endeavoring to conform ourselves to whatever he's doing. So what God is doing, that's what we're conforming to. We're not asking God to adjust what he's doing to fit us, to fit our needs, to fit our wants, to fit our thoughts. We are adjusting ourselves to fit God. Um, so we adjust to the leader. We adjust to the Father. Um, we don't, like I said, we don't endeavor to try to get God to adjust to us. Okay. The next, a very important thing about following for me is that following is a choice. We can make a conscious decision at any moment whether to follow or not follow, whether to obey or not obey. We can be obedient, we can be disobedient. At any given moment, at any point in time, we can make a conscious decision of what we're going to do. Okay? That's just like, whether you're on Facebook or Twitter or social media, uh, you make a conscious decision all the time whether you're going to follow this person or whether you're going to follow that person, or whether you're going to stop following somebody that you've been previously following. And it's the same way with God. He doesn't force it upon us. We have free will. But if we are to be true sons and daughters of God, then uh, we must make that conscious decision. And in most instances, it's a daily thing. We must wake up in the morning and make the decision we're going to follow God. Okay, and following is also an action. The kingdom of God is moving forward. It's advancing. It's on the move. So if we're going to follow, if we're going to conform to what the Father is doing, that means that we have to. It's an action. It's active. So we have to follow. Um, you can't accurately follow God without submitting to the spiritual authority that He's given you in the earth. That's my personal belief. I believe that God is a spirit, but He's given us authority in the earth. He's given us models and representatives in the earth. So if we're going to act, if we're going to follow Him in the manner that pleases Him, I think we also have to follow the spiritual authority, the people that He's placed in our lives, to help us grow and mature. Um, you know, because the Bible talks about, how can we love God, who we've not seen, when we don't love our brother who we see daily. And I think it's the same kind of thing. How can we follow God who we've not seen, if we can't follow the authority that He's placed in our lives? And I think any good leader is someone who understands that you have to be a follower. No matter how many people are following you, you need to be someone who's under authority and who's following someone also. And I think our ability to follow God correlates to our understanding of His love for us. We can trust His leadership because He loves us and only wants what's best for us. And so we're more apt to follow God the more we are acquainted with His love for us, that He only wants what's best for us. He's doing what's for our good. He's leading us, to a better place. And so when we understand who God is and how much He loves us, then it makes it easier for us to go along, particularly in those instances that we may not fully understand. Virtue, moving on to virtue number three, a son of God is a servant. And I'll read Matthew chapter 20, verse 26 through 28. The Bible talks about, or Jesus in this instance, he talks and he's speaking to his disciples, and he says, "Whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." So Jesus made it very clear that as a son of God, you have to be a servant. You have to value and esteem others and the needs of others above your own. You can't be self-centered. He's instructing his disciples that whoever wants to be greatest among you, you must become the servant. You must become the servant of all. The servant is not greater than the master. So, the disciples, having witnessed Jesus serve on numerous occasions, he was making it very clear that as you've seen me do, it's that you have to do it also. Um, Servants are willing to make things happen when the light isn't shining on them. The desire of a servant is to please God, not to receive the praise and recognition of man. So a servant's focus is on pleasing the master. It's to to do that which pleases the master, that which accomplishes the will of the master. A servant is not focused on themselves. The servant is focused on accomplishing the task or the business that has been charged to them by the master. And so we have to, as sons of God, be focused on uh, doing the will of the Father, serving the needs of our fellow man, serving the needs of our brothers and sisters, and doing it cheerfully, doing it willingly, doing it with great joy, knowing that it's not about who sees us, whether we ever get a pat on the back, whether we ever get recognition. It's about doing everything we do in a manner that pleases God, because it is His will. We are fulfilling His desire. We're fulfilling His dream, and the servant is content to play whatever role the master gives them, whether it's large or small. The servant is content to fulfill that role, to do it to the best of their ability, because they know that that brings the master great joy. Uh, the fourth virtue is that a son of God is loyal. Um, I think as sons of God, we must be steady, reliable, and thorough in what we do, especially in what we do for God. So we can't be double-minded. We can't be wavering in our thoughts, in our actions, in our decisions. We have to be resolute. We have to be focused and wholly committed to the Father, because that's what He requires of us. I think if we look at our model, Jesus was loyal, even until the death of the cross, to the Father. He had a work to do. He recognized that that was the only way to accomplish what the Father wanted to get done, and so he was loyal even to the point of sacrificing himself, sacrificing his life. And I think as sons of God, we must be loyal to the Father, even when it's in situations and circumstances that it looks like it's going to come at a personal cost to us. There's going to be some sacrifice. There's going to be some cost required of us. In thinking about loyalty, I think that it refers to our ability to be faithful to God and to His work. Um, Loyalty is, you can substitute that word with faithfulness, and so we really have to be committed and be faithful to not only God but to the work that He's given to us. And loyalty is something that it demands consistency. If you're going to be loyal, it's a consistent thing. You're either loyal or you're not. There's really, when it comes to loyalty, there's really no in between. You can't be loyal one day and disloyal another day. Either you're loyal or you're not. If there's loyalty is really something where there's no gray area. Um, when you think about, the Bible, and talks about loyalty, a good scripture is James chapter 1, verse 6 through 8. I'll read that briefly, and it reads, "But when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver, for a person with divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything that they do." So James lays it out very plainly that when we have divided loyalties, when we're inconsistent with our loyalty, we're unstable, and we shouldn't. In being that type of person, we shouldn't expect to receive anything from God. He wants us to be loyal. Jesus said, "I would that you be either hot or cold. If you're lukewarm, if you're inconsistent, you're one thing one day and another the next." He said that he would spew us out of his mouth. And so we must be loyal. We must be consistent as sons and daughters of God. Virtue number 5: a son is proven. Hebrews chapter 5, verse 8 and 9, it reads, "Though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered. And having been perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all who obey him." So Jesus, even Jesus, as a son of God, he had to be proven. To prove is to establish, it's to demonstrate the truth or validity of something, either by argument or evidence. And our faith in God is proven through how we handle the hard tests and trials of life. And really, that's what the Bible speaks of when it's talking about Jesus being perfected. That he, as as a son of God, he was validated. He was proven um, because of how he handled the hardships that he had to endure. Um, it's the because it's those tough places that we in life, when we encounter an obstacle or a challenge, that we either are overcome by those things, we're overwhelmed by those things, or we overcome those things through the word. um, and you see in instance after instance, Jesus overcame every situation, every obstacle, every challenge that he was faced with. And those are the things that perfected him. Those are the things that proved him, that validate not only as being a son of God, but as being the son of God. So as sons of God, our commitment must be proven, so that we're able to stand firm when things get difficult. And I think that that's the true test of sonship. That when the heat gets poured on, when things aren't going the way that we think they should, that sons are going to be committed. They're going to be resolute, and they're going to stand firm. They're not going to be moved by what's happening around them. They're going to be continue to be loyal to both God and to the work that He's given to them. And then moving along to virtue number 6, sons and God, sons of God are pursuers. We talked about earlier that sons of God are followers. Um, Virtue number 6 takes it a step further, that sons of God are pursuers. Pursuing really takes following to a whole nother level. Whenever we pursue, we follow closely, so that we can overtake, secure, or obtain. Um, Pursuit is really, um, following that has a whole other level of intensity. There's great intentionality. There's great intensity. You think about when police officers are pursuing a suspect. I mean, they are laser focused. It is intense, and they're doing everything that they can to make sure that they're able to catch that suspect. And so it's the same thing with God. As sons of God, we not only follow, but we are intense in that following. We are pursuing Him. We're actively going after Him. We're seeking Him. We're diligent in seeking Him. Um, we must be active pursuers of God. We must be active pursuers of His will, and we must also be active pursuers of His promises. James 4:8 says that if we draw near to God, He will draw near to us. And so God gives us access to come as close as we want to come. We can get everything we need or desire from the Father, but we must first become pursuers. We must go after Him. We must be intentional. There must be passion and intensity in how we're pursuing the Father, and it must be an ongoing thing. We don't pursue for a limited period of time and then decide that we're going to do something else. Pursuing it's continuous. It's an ongoing basis. We're going after God with intentionality. We're going after God with purpose, and we're trying to secure. We're trying to obtain. As I mentioned in the earlier definition of pursuing. Um, those are six of the virtues. Coming down to the seventh and final virtue is that a son of God acts as an envoy. And an envoy simply is not just a messenger, it's much more than a messenger. An envoy is a person that is a diplomatic representative. They've been given authority just below that of an ambassador. And they are sent on an official mission. So envoys are representatives of a particular government or or a body that have been given authority to conduct business on behalf of who they represent. So there's a certain degree of authority that they have, but with that authority also comes responsibility. So sons of God act as His envoy. It's not our agenda, it's His agenda. It's not what we want to accomplish, it's what He wants to accomplish. So we're doing the will of the Father. We're conducting the Father's business. We have authority to do that, and we have a responsibility to do that. 2 Corinthians 5:20 says that we are ambassadors for Christ. That means that we sends us, and we're speaking and or acting on His behalf. Um, we are to rise up in the earth wherever God has called us to be His anointed representatives. Really, in essence, we are His hands, we are His feet, His arms and legs, and we've been empowered to be His heart. So, meaning that we've been empowered to be um, His expression of love in the earth for, quite honestly, a lost and dying generation. So as as sons of God, we act as His envoy. We're the hands and feet of God in the earth. We're His arms. We're His body in the earth. And so we've been empowered to represent Him, and we've been given a mission. We've been each given the ministry of reconciliation. So it's our job to express the Father's love. It's our job to represent Him, and in most instances, the concept, particularly people who are unbelievers, the concept that they have of God is usually formed through their interactions with believers. And so they come to initially know and understand the Father and how he operates and how he acts based on their interactions with us. And so that's why it's important that as envoys, we don't carry out our own agenda. We closely follow and pursue the Father, conforming to his leading, so that our as his representatives, our representation of him is accurate, and people are able to get an accurate depiction of who the Father is, how he loves, how he operates, which will draw them into fellowship with him. So that's it, you guys. Those are the 7 virtues of true sons of God. I hope that this has been a blessing for you. Please be sure to tune in same time next week, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Pastor Dexter will be back, and I'm sure he'll have an incredible message for you guys as we continue to go deeper in our understanding of who we are as sons and daughters of God, and begin to take on that identity and allow that to transform us from the inside out. As I mentioned before, I encourage you. What we're sharing over the course of this Identity Shift series is coming from Pastor Dexter's book, Identity Shift, The Change That Changes Everything. If you don't have this book, please go pick up your copy. I guarantee you won't be disappointed. It'll be a tremendous blessing to you. And I hope you, before I close, I'll say a quick prayer. I hope you guys have learned something, and you're able to take it a step further, and hopefully this will build your expectation for next week, that you'll go a little deeper in your understanding of who you are as a son and daughter of God. Okay, Father, we thank you for this evening. Thank you for every person who had the opportunity to join and connect with us. We pray that you just begin to this message in their minds and hearts, Father, that we are called to be more than Christians, Father. You've given so much, Father, so that we could become your sons and your daughters. We could be your children, empowered with your authority, Father, to represent you in the earth, God, and to conduct business on your behalf, Father. And not only that, God, so that we could be as Jesus was, as sons and daughters of God, Father, and we could destroy the works of the devil, Father, and set the captives free, Father. We could expose the lies and devices of the enemy and make the truth plain,